Hey there! I've wanted to make a video on this topic for a while, and with the new year having come semi-recently, I figured this would be as good a time as any to finally get it done. If all goes well, this video should be out around 2 weeks after the second Vecna hits the live servers. If you want my quick thoughts on the Stranger Things Part 2 chapter, I think it's got a lot of merits. For once, the perks are unique and pretty good. I especially like Change of Plan, Bada Bada Boom, Turn Back the Clock, and We See You. Only big losers are the teamwork perks, since they're mostly just weaker proof thyself, and that's not that interesting. No new map is kinda disappointing, but I'll take no map over a new variant of one of my least favorites. And while I don't quite understand picking Dustin for Survivor, the updated voice lines for every Stranger Things character are really nice. I won't miss Steagle, like, at all. The issue for me is the first. Most killers aren't a ton of fun to go against when played optimally, but Henry in particular is just really spammy and shows a lot of power creep. At minimum, his World Breaker is still longer than Dredge's Nightfall, while also activating way more often and giving way more value. I think a lot of buffs to Dredge and Unknown in particular are in order, considering how much Henry overshadows them both. Still though, I'd say that 2026 is starting off pretty strong. The delay we received in 2025 for this does make me wonder though. How would I structure a year of Dead by Daylight? What key changes would I pick? What new content would I like to see, and when? Well, I decided to think about it, probably for too long, and came up with an entire roadmap. Not every change or idea is going to be fully developed and explored, but I'll try and at least give a good enough idea for everything. Hey, future many achievables here to bring your expectations back just a little bit. While writing the script, I didn't realize how big these ideas would end up, and I don't think anyone would want to sit through an hour-long video. Subjecting yourself to my voice for an hour would make anyone go insane. So, to compromise, I'll just be covering January and March for this video. The rest will still come throughout the year though, so keep an eye out, got it? Good, let's get on with it. Starting in January with a mid-chapter, I would choose to add no new characters. Honestly, I mostly dislike the idea of adding new characters during what is called the mid-chapter. I think it's warranted for supplementing the release of a solo licensed character, but when you get to a point where you're dropping multiple mid-chapters a year with solo survivors, it gets annoying. January is instead going to be focused on a bunch of changes for a killer that has desperately needed one for years. One with a severely outdated design who has been buffed a ton, yet still sits in the bottom 3 on most tier lists. That's right, we're reworking Trapper. For a while now, the Trapper has been in an unsatisfying state. A lot of the frustration comes from the outdated methods for how the Trapper obtains and sets up his bear trap, which makes him feel clunky compared to other killers like him. All 2 of them. Along with this, bear traps are far too dependent on chance for the Trapper to be able to actually use them from long distances. This forces him into setting all of his traps in a single area, usually around the basement, where his movement is then limited because of his inability to walk through bear traps freely. Here's a list of changes I would make to Trapper to remedy these problems. The Trapper now begins the trial with all bear traps in his inventory, meaning he begins the trial with 10 bear traps. Decrease the duration of the setting phase to 1 second, reducing the total setting time to 2 seconds. The Trapper no longer gets caught in his own bear trap. When a survivor gets caught in a bear trap, the Trapper gains 7.5% haste until said survivor is no longer caught in the bear trap. Increased the chance of survivors escaping from a bear trap to 100%. Increased the time it takes for a survivor to attempt an escape from a bear trap to 14 seconds. Increased the time it takes for another survivor to help a survivor escape from a bear trap to 7 seconds. Increase the time it takes for a survivor to disarm a bear trap to 5 seconds. Each time a survivor disarms a bear trap, they take 4 seconds longer upon the next disarm attempt, up to a maximum disarm time of 16 seconds. The farthest unarmed bear trap from the Trapper will be reset and armed every 30 seconds. Survivors who are rescued from a hook now gain immunity to bear traps for 10 seconds. This deactivates when the exit gates are powered. And finally, bear traps automatically disguise themselves into whatever ground they are placed on over 20 seconds, making it harder for survivors to detect them. Along with this, I've also chosen to rework a lot of Trapper's add-ons, because currently a lot of them kinda suck. 5 of his add-ons go unchanged, and I won't go over all of them in depth, but here's what his browns look like, here's what his greens look like, here's what his blues look like, and here's what his purples look like. Pause and go back to look over them if you'd like. Where I want to go in depth is on what his iridescent add-ons look like, because there's a bit more to them than the others. Firstly, say goodbye to Bloody Coil and welcome in the Woodworking Toolkit. You can now place bear traps inside of upright pallets. When the trapper gets stunned by the trapped pallet being dropped, the survivor who dropped it is completely unaffected. Everything goes on as usual. When a survivor drops the trapped pallet and fails to stun the trapper, they are trapped for 7 seconds or until the trapper breaks the pallet, but do not get injured. Another survivor cannot save the trapped survivor during this time. When the trapper breaks the pallet while the survivor is trapped, the survivor will be freed and suffer from the following effects. If healthy, the trapped survivor suffers from a 10% hindered status effect for 5 seconds. If injured, the trapped survivor suffers from the deep wound status effect. If suffering from a deep wound, the trapped survivor suffers from the incapacitated status effect for 7 seconds. These status effects do not stack on top of each other, by the way. It's meant more as a huge punishment for healthy survivors compared to injured ones. While it's a little gimmicky to set up a trap directly inside of a pallet, I think the benefits can be immense, especially if you get to a god pallet before the survivors can. Now for his iridescent stone. Since its old effect is now part of Trapper's base kit, we need something new, something extreme, and what I've done is just that. Bear traps can no longer be set from your hand, but can still be reset from the ground. Pressing and holding the power button while not standing on a disarmed bear trap will prepare the trapper to throw a bear trap forwards in an arc with a maximum range of 20 meters. You see the location of where your bear trap will land before you throw. If a thrown bear trap collides with a survivor, they will be trapped. The thrown bear trap will land on the ground disarmed if it does not collide with a survivor. Yep, we're turning him into a projectile killer. I've always liked iridescent add-ons that fundamentally change the way you play the killer, and this would certainly be one of those. For reference, the throw arc would be very similar to Clown with the Parade Gloves add-on, so that it's not entirely hindered by indoor maps. Trapper's always been hugely neglected in the balance department, despite being the game's poster child in a lot of material. These changes were meant to make him significantly stronger without making him too much more annoying to go against, and I hope I succeeded. Another big focus of this mid-chapter is on exhaustion perks, a mechanic that's also been in the game for a very long time. Most of them need a change in some way, the biggest offender being Sprint Burst. It's really weird that this perk has been completely ignored since 2.1.0 because it does need some change. Nothing severe, no huge rework, but a simple number reduction. Its haste effect is now only 30%, not 50%. This is mainly just so it's not so frustrating to fight as a slower killer. Going 6 meters per second for free worked when people didn't know how to optimize that distance and hold the perk until necessary, but now, they really don't need it. Moving at 5.2 meters per second is still plenty good. That's base frenzy speed after all. Another exhaustion-related perk that should be changed is Vigil. I have no idea why they chose to buff this perk's effect to 66%. That is insane and should never have been greenlit. This perk will no longer affect exposed or hindered, only recover exhaustion 33% faster, and only recover from everything else 50% faster. I am tired of exposed perks getting passively destroyed by this. I am tired of Clown and Freddy being uniquely destroyed by this, and I am tired of Sprint Burst recovering in 24 seconds because of this. Speaking of exposed, Dramaturgy is, in my opinion, mostly fine. I think the only problem with it is how short the exposed effect actually is. Most of the time, the distance you make with it will prevent any chance of getting punished for rolling exposed. The duration will be up to 25 seconds. Don't like it? Well, you can roll for exposed outside of chase, and then it's impossible to get in chase. Just use your head. You probably forgot that Ghost Notes came out, and I don't blame you. It's not great, only buffing the recovery rate for exhaustion by 10%, and its only benefit over Vigil is that you get the same effect as Lightweight when exhausted. I think it could use a buff up to 25%, then prevent it and Vigil from stacking the exhaustion recovery rates, and let it make blood pools disappear at the same time as scratch marks. That way, it can then be used with Dead Hard and Overcome as well, which Ghost Notes currently can't. I think a lot of exhaustion perks feel kind of hard to pick because of the opportunity cost, and Lithe is a primary reason for that opportunity cost existing. It's just too easy to activate. There's no effort in it for either side, making chases with it kinda one note and bland. I think it needs a huge rework taking inspiration from Cut Loose. Your first fast vault starts a 10-second timer, and fast vaulting again with that timer grants you 4 seconds of 50% haste. This makes it a tool specifically designed to help you get out of weaker window loops faster, since those are often very unsafe against a smart killer, but in a way that's now got a bit more depth to it. The killer can now try and play around the potentiality of you having the perk by preventing you from using vaults, which then makes you have to keep that in mind as a survivor. I don't know, it just seems cool, at least more cool than instantly vaulting a window and going to the next tile for free. I like balanced landing, and I think it balance-wise is pretty much fine. This concept is mostly for fun, but what if a survivor using balanced landing did a cool roll when they landed, like Leon in RE4 when he jumps from ridiculous heights? It would continue your forward motion in a committal way, kinda like the startup to Dramaturgy, but that means you're still actively moving forward instead of staggering and losing all momentum before you speed up. And here's a group of slightly smaller changes that I think would be neat. Pause the video and look back if you want. Whew, that was a lot, but I think this would overall work towards a healthier game state with more exhaustion perk diversity. Let's talk about the Rift passes, because they're pretty important to the game's content flow. Reverence was insanely disappointing for me. None of the skins were both good and for characters I cared about, the free track was bloated with almost nothing of note, and they slapped the Deep Rift variants halfway through the Rift. I hated it. The current one is okay, definitely a step up, but that's not a high bar to clear. I have a lot of problems with the Rifts these days. Them focusing on a general theme is cool in theory, but it leads to a lot of ugly cosmetics that have pretty little combo potential. The one Rift of recent times that I absolutely loved was Rift 21, Dominus. With 16 new outfits, I don't think there was a single major miss here. In both quality and quantity, Dominus delivered. Now, I'm not a good artist by any means, but the headliners for this first Rift certainly are. We'll have Jeff and the Artist repping headlining skins reminiscent of black and white cartoons from the early 1900s. This idea was actually inspired by a mod for Deadlock that got fairly popular, Toon Ivy. I think a skin like that would be really fun to shake things up visually. Simple textures, monochrome colors, spindly limbs, and rounded structure. I don't know, I think it'd be fun. The Artist outfit would also visually affect her crows with the same style, which would make it earn the visceral rarity. As for Jeff, his skin would only be Ascended rarity, since it's a fully new model. Both would also have unique voice filters, sort of like Street Fighter 3 12's X-copied sound effects, if you've played that. As for other skins, I think I'd like this Rift to focus on early 1900s fashion. Unknown, Skull Merchant, Houndmaster, Tori, V, Hattie, Meg, and Jonah would be my picks for this style of skin. Houndmaster is desperate for cosmetics, as are Tori, V, and Jonah. Unknown has lived for decades, centuries even, so it likely could have taken the form of a man or woman during the early 1900s. Skull Merchant could use a slightly more down-to-earth outfit in my opinion. Meg's been in a content drought for 2025, and Hattie's just there because I like her. And then there's also the recolors. I'll pick Plague and Twins for the killer recolors, and the survivor recolors will go to Kate, Jane, Elodie, and Yunjin, with these being the bases. I picked these not because I think they fit with the theme, but more so just because a lot of the pieces here have textures or colors that I'm not a huge fan of, and I'd like to see them done in a different way. Now that we've finally set up that rift, we're done with the January mid-chapter. Honestly, this alone is more plentiful than a lot of Behavior's mid-chapters, and I hope you liked at least some of the ideas. But, without further ado, let's move on to the March chapter. March is such a fun time of the year. Spring's just started, and things are finally warming up enough to where I don't feel like I'm walking through Ormond every time I go outside. And hey, halfway through the month comes a holiday for the Emerald Isle, so what better way to celebrate in Dead by Daylight than by finally adding a character that twists Irish folklore. The Man of Green has come to do no good. Yes, I wholeheartedly want the Leprechaun in Dead by Daylight. He is iconic in all the best ways, and Warwick Davis did an amazing job in all of his movies. The replacement actor in the 2018 reboot, Lyndon Porco, was also pretty good, so long as you ignore the origins non-Leprechaun. This character is endlessly fun to watch and could work fantastically in the game. I imagine he'd have a mechanic similar to Pinhead's box, but with his pot of gold. While it's on the map, the Leprechaun gains extra strength. When gold is in the hands of a survivor, they take some of those powers, but expose themselves to more danger at the hands of the Leprechaun himself. Each survivor could take from the pot of gold, splitting the bonuses and dangers evenly. He'd also probably share Chucky's third-person camera due to his height. Part of what makes the Leprechaun so hard to adapt is that his rules change a lot. Sometimes he can bite a person and start turning them into a wereprechaun. Sometimes he's repelled by four-leaf clovers. And sometimes he can be blown to smithereens and then regenerate out of some dude's pee.
Let that be a lesson to you, lad. Always wear a prophylactic.
I like the use of clovers repelling him, and I can see them work almost like Springtrap's cameras, where pointing them at him eventually slows him down, almost like a crucifix to a demon or something. Now, that's all well and good and thematic, but this is Dead by Daylight. We do need a component to his power deliberately made to assist him in loops, especially since he'd be a 4.4 meters per second killer like Chucky. My idea for this is to just let him pick up and throw shit. He'd use his powers to rip matter from the random clutter around the trial grounds and then use it as a ranged attack. It likely wouldn't actually affect the terrain, though. We're not bringing back the Smasher, God no. In the cosmetic department, it's kind of tough to pick options for him. Most of the changes he sees to his outfit between the movies are minuscule, but he does occasionally have a new look that would work wonders for very rare outfits. Leprechaun 2's opening sequence, set way in the past, has him donning a completely new look. That could work wonders for a very rare skin. Similarly, I think his look in Back to the Hood, with that gothic black trench coat, is a little bit different enough to be another very rare. There's some other picks, like Lep 3's nurse outfit and Lep 4's tuxedo, which can work for very rares, but they're only for like one scene at most, and that's kinda lame. I'd also like to see a unique headpiece that's the same as normal, but gives him the sunglasses he sports near the end of Lep in the Hood. Just imagine getting styled on by a leprechaun in sunglasses, and then he nods at you. I'd uninstall on the spot, personally. His last and only Ascended outfit will be his look in Leprechaun Returns. The 2018 reboot Leprechaun wasn't played by Warwick Davis, instead played by Lyndon Porco, who did a pretty great job. The skin's gonna have unique voice lines to replicate his different cadence as the character, so you really feel the difference.
25 years then? I've got a lot of killing to make up for.
As for his 3 perks, I think Leprechauns would be intentionally kinda dumb. I think it'd be funny if there was a Scourge hook where they can't attempt to jump off of the hook through any means that aren't the anti-camp mechanic, with some secondary function like haste after hooking them on a Scourge hook. This could be a funny way to counter Deliverance, and with a Monster Shrine pairing, you'd also counter Wicked. Other than that, I'd love to see a perk which counters items again, like a Reverse Exaltation. I'm not sure why Behavior nerfed every single item-related perk to no longer counter medkits and toolboxes. That was pretty stupid. Every time a generator is finished, the obsession changes, and whenever a new obsession is made, their current item loses 50% of its remaining charges. This would mostly serve to counter medkits, and I think that's fine. I think it's fine for a perk to nerf the strongest item in the game. His final perk could be akin to a reverse human greed, kicking chests to open them instead of closing them. It would still spawn an item, but it may be half the charges. It could also grant some effect after opening the chest, like 5% haste and undetectable for like 30 seconds. Fairly impactful and in your control, but can only be used a few times a match. Now, there's our Leprechaun, and he's great, but let's sprinkle in some chaos with a side mode. Chaos Shuffle would return in tandem with the release of the Leprechaun, but with some major changes. Everyone still starts with random perks and add-ons, but survivors don't get to choose their item, and all offerings are randomly played. That's all well and good for the setup of the trial, but we've got some more shuffling to do. In the middle of the trial, after a generator is completed or after 2 hook states are applied, everyone's perks will swap along with held items and add-ons. Not enough chaos for you? Don't sweat it. Where some generators didn't spawn, this modifier has slot machines that are always revealed to everyone. Survivors and killers can roll at these for a myriad of outcomes, each of them weighted differently. With a 35% chance to drop, the most likely outcome, you get a re-roll of your current build, including items and add-ons. Slightly less likely, at 30%, is a 5% haste effect for the next 30 seconds. Jumping all the way down to only a 10% chance to drop, you have one of 3 outcomes: a 3rd add-on slot on your item or killer power for the rest of the trial, a 5th perk slot for the rest of the trial, or a guarantee on your next reroll to get an iridescent add-on on either your item or your killer power. And if you get that lucky jackpot of 5%, well, you only have one outcome depending on the roll. If you're a survivor, you swap to a completely different survivor in your roster, gain endurance for 60 seconds, and disable your perks until the next reroll. As for killer, you still swap to a completely different character in your roster and disable your perks until the next reroll, but all survivors gain exposed for 60 seconds. That is what chaos looks like. Everyone has no idea what their perks or add-ons or power are doing, but they're having fun, goddammit. The current Chaos Shuffle is just too safe for my taste. I want something absolutely insane. As for balance changes, we won't have a ton, since the focus of the patch is on the new Chaos Shuffle and Leprechaun. The biggest change we'll give is a 3rd-person camera to any character that's low to the ground. This will include a Crouched Pig, Crouched Ghostface, and Victor. Doesn't really make sense to me that Chucky gets this when these characters don't. Trust me, the rest of this series is going to have a ton of big ideas for changes for a bunch of killers, perks, and whatnot. So there's January through to March wrapped up. I'll be sure to cover the rest of my roadmap throughout the year, so stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Whether you might want a re-roll of your current build, including the items and add-ons, haste or hindered for the next 20 seconds, a 3rd add-on on... Adam? Born again!